back to Soul Podcast. I'm your host, Kaylie Marie. This is my beautiful mother, Carol. And I think today we wanted to talk a little bit about understanding grief and working through grief, and really how mediumship can help you to heal or work through your grief and really let go of anything that you've been holding on to surrounding a loved one's passing. So, Carol, why don't you just start with talking a little bit about like the first time you felt grief and how you worked through it or how you learned to understand it, because I feel like grief is the most unexplainable human emotion that anybody can feel. And I feel like it's definitely one of the hardest. And for our work as mediums and connecting people with their loved ones, to be able to help them work through that by, number one, getting evidence that their loved one is with them. When one of the best things that I love in our readings is when their loved ones come through with things that are happening right now in their life. And I guess I could share a little story really quickly, because it's those stories that really make us feel like, wow, our loved ones, like, they really are with us. They know what's still happening, and it gives us that sense of comfort and just love and support that our loved ones really are with us. So I want to share a story really quickly that happened to me a few weeks back with a client, and I was connecting to their loved one on the other side. And I had brought through a name, we'll say the name was Jane, and I was connecting to this client's mother, and she was like, yep, that's my mother's name. And I said, oh, okay. And then right after, I got another name super quick. We'll say the name was Amber. And I said, I'm seeing like an A name. I'm hearing Amber. And my client was like, well, I don't know an Amber, but I grew up on Amber Lane. That was our childhood house that we grew up in. And I was like, okay, me being the skeptic that we are, we always want more. We want to make sure that this really is something that their loved one is trying to say. So I went and I asked the client's loved one to give me anything else surrounding this name that my client would understand. And I specifically saw a moving sign being put in the front yard. And I said, okay, this is so weird. And I'm getting chills just talking about this again now. But I was like, this is so weird. Your loved one's showing me a moving sign. She's putting a moving sign in your front yard. I said, are you thinking about moving, or some immediate family? I said, it has to be, because it feels close to you. I said, did somebody recently move, or is somebody thinking about moving? And she said, well, actually, my one sister is thinking about moving. We're all trying to get her to move because we all think it would be best for her and her health right now. And she said, and she actually lives in our childhood home on Amber Lane. So I was like, that is so crazy, because she was saying how it's something that their family was just talking about, and they've been trying to get this sister to move closer or move just in a different area. And her loved one, the mom that I was connecting with, who was crossed over, came through with the most beautiful message to let her family know it's okay to let go of that childhood house, and that their mom's soul is at peace, and that they don't have to hold on to any guilt with letting that go, or anything like that. So it really is those messages like that in mediumship readings that our loved ones let us know that they are around us. And I feel like that is one of the best ways that they allow us to feel their love and their support still being on the other side. But going back to the question of grief and how that first time you felt grief was like for you, or how you first navigated grief before really understanding mediumship and the work that you do now.
So I feel like I've shared before, like I was brought up with, my brother passed away, my younger brother, when I was 2.5. So I feel like the environment I was in was definitely heavy grief. So I, learned to different things I learned. Like I was more of a shyer, quiet kid and just absorbing and just taking in my environment around. I didn't want to upset anyone more than what I saw. Or so that was my first, like unconsciously, I would say.
But I think that's a really good point too, because there's a lot of people who are very sensitive and they don't know how to work through it or know why they are so sensitive. And I think it is a good point when you grow up in a household that already has so much emotion that isn't looked at or brought to the light. It's almost like our souls are left trying to figure this all out on our own. So you learned this sensitivity of, well, how is this loved one going to be today, and how can I make sure that I don't change that or trigger anything in them because of their own stuff. And we can get into that in another episode, because family dynamics I feel like are a big thing that I love to talk about. But it really is, your soul had to learn how to be sensitive through the grief that the people around you were feeling, even though you weren't even going through it.
Yeah, and it wasn't until I could kind of remember exactly being on my back porch with my mom. It wasn't until after my second brother, PJ, passed away that, it just opened a whole nother set of grief for my mother, because I feel like it was so connected to her other son that passed away. And just losing a child and then going through that again, not just one time, but 2 times. So I was putting together with, for my mom, I guess we were on the back porch. It was summertime talking. And that's when I was into mediumship after I had the stroke. 11 months later, PJ passed away. And I remember just coming up with this certain dynamics in the household, like what you're saying with my emotions, and just putting together pieces so I can understand how this parent did this or this parent did that, or where I felt lost within the family, lost in my own emotions because I had to uncover them at such a young age, or be with them kind of by myself in ways because of what everyone else was experiencing. So I remember just connecting all these dots and thinking hypothetically. I would tell my mom, I said, you had to have gone through a depression. Like, you had to. I have 5 children. I couldn't imagine losing a child. And I was 2.5. So I needed, my mother at that age, like little kids, like they never leave the side. And I remember never leaving her side well into my, 5, 6 years old. And she would go to the neighbor house talking, because she was always in her emotions and needing that outlet. And I was just listening, absorbing. And so I remember, so putting all this together for my mom, and we were talking. And just, she told me, well, I think she said counseling was not really popular back then, but I think she did seek out the free help that would, or whatever it was around, and she thought she healed or made peace. And again, grief, I don't think there's a healed. There's a peace that you can come to surrounding it, but I don't think that.
I think it is important with grief to remember that we're still human, and we're on this earth to experience this humanness. And we can get to a point, like you said, where there's more of a peace surrounding a situation that has happened to us. But there's always, always, always going to be those times where something's going to come up for you, or something's going to trigger you, and it's going to bring you back to how you felt when that situation occurred, like with a loved one, or you're going to miss them a little extra one day, or it's going to be a hard week. But that doesn't mean you're 5 steps back from where you thought you were. It's really just our humanness, and it's just part of life. And I don't think there's any way of getting around that when those bumps come.
I think it's kind of like, if you think about, like, even gathering your emotions. Like, we still have to live. We have to wake up the next day. We have to function in this world. So if we want to cry today because I miss my mom, or if I want to just not get out of bed because I miss my mom, but I have to go to work and I have to, and my mom died 3 years ago, or whatever my story is, I have to go to work. And then that emotion stores, or then I feel like we put it somewhere. Yeah. And then this just happened to me. That's why I'm kind of going off this story. And then I ended up being in yoga a couple weeks back, and I just had one thought that led to more. My mother was a yogi, and I was laying, on the floor. It was restorative, my mom's favorite yoga, doing her favorite yoga pose, and which happened to be a hip opener, which is your sacral, which is connected to your
and like generational trauma. I've heard that too with your hips.
So I'm there, fine, and I just had a thought like, I had my own personal yoga instructor when my mom was alive, and then I just started crying. But then it turned into the full hour and a half crying, and I couldn't stop. Like, I could hardly, every time I tried to think or feel again, because I'm like, well, I know you're here, and I know, oh, she's here, I'm feeling her. Like, I just was trying to shut my mind out because I couldn't stop crying. But anyway, so what I was trying to say is, like, they will come out one form or another. And I think it's very helpful to make space for grief in general, whether it's through like dedicating your yoga practice, or not every single yoga practice, but when you intentionally, I remember I used to get Reiki after PJ passed away, and I would dedicate it to my sadness and grief surrounding his passing, and knowing that, it kind of like in my head, I would want to transform it into something that I could honor him with. But I remember intentionally doing that, and I think that helps. And so I don't know, did I answer your question?
No, yeah, but I want to say too, because I've had people tell me before on that note of honoring your grief or tuning into those harder emotions, it is something that I feel like we're taught, or a lot of people are taught, are not a good thing. You don't want to be a negative person. You don't want to focus on that energy. You don't want to focus on those emotions. You're giving it power if you focus on those types of emotions.
That kind of brings me back to the porch talking with my mom, because she told me I had, I forgot at the time, 3 other children that I had to take care of. I didn't have time to stay in bed because her son passed away. And I'm like, oh my God, like, and life did go on, even though it went on, like I originally was telling her, you had to be in a depression, like you had to be in this deep grief. And I'm sure she was. So she was just going through the motions. Yeah. And me as a 3-year-old, I'm sure following it. But then whenever she had a friend nearby and talking about it, like, so yeah.
There's that too. I almost feel like there's like a couple of different types of people, because there's people that are taught that like, well, you got to keep going, but I've also witnessed the type of people who are taught that it's actually a bad thing to focus on that. You need to be happy, you need to be positive. And I've had my own experience with that with a client where they were just telling me that they don't want to focus on that energy and they're not that type of person. And I feel like there's a difference between living in your grief every single day and letting it consume you, and versus giving it space to honor it and acknowledge it so that you can work through it. When we talk about this stuff, we're not saying to sit in your grief and to live there and to let it consume you. We bring it through from a standpoint of, it's so important to acknowledge and to validate all of these emotions, not even just grief, but any emotion that comes up for you, negative or positive. If we don't give it that space to just be validated and listened to, it's like you said, it's going to be stored somewhere and it's going to come out one way or another. I feel like, just try to teach doing it from a conscious standpoint of consciously giving yourself that space to feel these emotions. And it's the negative emotions that are the hardest ones to let ourselves feel without judgment, but I feel like those are the most important ones for sure.
I had someone tell me after my mother passed away, because I'm connecting to loved ones all the time, and my mom has been around since she's passed on, but and I had someone tell me, like, well, you know this, you know where they're at, and that was kind of not tricky in my head, but I've gone through a lot of personal loss where I did connect to that comment, because for me, I thought, yeah, she is here. She's here. Mm-hmm. So I'm not grieving, and I'm so blessed on one hand that she's connecting with me, that, that I don't have to grieve in the way of thinking, some other people who maybe don't have that awareness to spirit. So I'm very grateful, very blessed for that. But at the same time, I was almost connecting to, what's wrong with me? Why am I feeling like this? Because she's right here. Like, it doesn't make sense. So it's also, I don't know what you say about that. But
I think it's about just finding the balance with it, and finding the balance in remembering that there are ways to connect with your loved one, and that they are showing up when you have your own experiences with mediumship. You start to build this trust and have this support from your loved ones, so that you do know that you're with you, or that they're with you, but there is this balance of, but you're still human, like we talked about, and there's still going to be times and there's nothing that we can do to get around some of these emotions. And that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I feel like in this society, emotions are something that are tricky, because we really are taught, like, you have to be positive all the time, and you have to see things from a good perspective, or everything's working out in your favor and all of that. And as much as that's true, there's still such an important aspect of allowing yourself to feel the stuff that doesn't feel good.
I was thinking about this story that after my mom passed, she lived with me for 7 months prior to her passing, and telepathically we were talking, you two, with her. I remember you gave her Reiki, and my brother came to you, and different things like that. I don't
really remember that.
Yeah, you were giving her Reiki, and you text me from across the room. We never left the family room. And you're like, Mom, Uncle PJ just came. And I said, and you said, he said, Grandma's going to pass away on Thursday. And I said, yeah, well, you said like 4 days. And it was Monday or something.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Sunday. And you said 4 days. And I said, okay, oh my God, whatever. So when the hospice nurse came the next day, so I documented all in my notes, because I was talking to her telepathically as well, and just putting in my notes, because I'm a hard skeptic, and I'm like, we'll see if this stuff comes true, whatever she could give me. And so then the hospice nurse came, I remember, and I said, I just have a question, because he was like, oh, she looks good, whatever. I don't know, assessing the situation. And my family, I remember at the time, like, we all were going through our own experience with losing our mother. And I feel like some of my siblings maybe felt she had, months to go, because my dad, had a different experience. And then some felt like it could be any time. And I knew it was going to be Thursday, because I was like, well, PJ came to her. So I asked the nurse, I said, and I just told, I think it was him actually. I just told him, I said, my daughter's a medium. And
you did not.
Yeah, I said, and my brother who passed away came to her and said she was going to, go on Thursday. Is there any, like, I know you can't guarantee when someone goes, but how close do you feel she is? And he said that is very likely. And I was like, wow. So we were kind of shocked, because at least we had some sort of timeline, because like I said, some people thought she could go on months like that. Mm-hmm. And so she did pass away that Thursday. But what I was going to say is me and her were talking, or she was talking to me. We would spend the night in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Someone always stayed with her in the family room.
Mm-hmm.
She had her bed in there, and this one day she told me, when you see the yellow rose, that's when your heart knows. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, that sounds really poetic. That sounds cool. And I couldn't wait. I wrote it in my notes. And
but this is while she was still here,
still
right?
here.
Okay.
But then I thought, what does that mean? Right away, as soon as I wrote it in my notes, I'm like, but what does it mean? Is that when she's going to die? Is that when I see the yellow rose? Like, mm-hmm. I didn't know. And I was like, Carol, you know how this works. Slow down. Let it go. It's in your notes. When you see it, you'll know. Mm-hmm. And so I really let it go. And then we, went on to spending the last however long I had with my mom. So mm-hmm. It wasn't until when she passed away, at her memorial, we got COVID. So we all got COVID. That's what happened. Mm-hmm. And I had it going to a memorial, not knowing, but the next day we found out we all got COVID. So we all got couple weeks we were in bed, sick with it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it was even more because the grief in mm-hmm. the first. So I was really sick with COVID. Mm-hmm. But I also knew it was a gift from my mom, because the truth was, I felt like, I had to get back to life. I had to go back to work, whatever. And I remember thanking her, for...
And that's the belief that she taught you when you were little. Life goes
true.
on, and that's what you had to do. So that's everything, I'm sure, that was going through your head unconsciously at that time.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe a week, maybe mm-hmm. 2 weeks. But I couldn't justify being off for a month, and I needed a lot of time. So I was sick with COVID. And I remember taking a bath this one day, and it was probably a week after her passing, and my brother was having dreams with her, and she was coming around to everyone. It was great. Mm-hmm. Not me though. And I remember being in the tub thinking, Mom, and I was talking to her, I'm like, I don't need you to come, because I understand it all. This is what I was telling her. I said, but why haven't you come? Just to let me know you're okay. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm shocked about. So there was a little sadness in there, because I was like, mm-hmm. I'm not looking for you, but I'm here really sick, mm-hmm. But you didn't just pop in my dream. You didn't mm-hmm. where are you? I'm just really surprised that you haven't let me know you're okay. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And it was, during, being sick and crying and taking a bath, taking care of myself. So that evening, I couldn't believe it. That evening I have a couple of friends that live in Texas, and that evening I got, I'm trying to think who sent me the first one. Okay. That evening I got a bouquet of flowers, mm-hmm. and I noticed a yellow rose. There was all these different flowers, but I noticed a yellow rose. I was like, oh my God. And so of course I was hyper vigilant on that. So I looked and I counted, and there was 6 huge yellow roses mm-hmm. with other flowers, and I'm checking under each flower. It was this packed bouquet, and I'm checking. I'm like, there got to be a 7, because my mom had 6 children, and mm-hmm. I was trying to debunk it, because I was like, this can't be the yellow rose she was talking about. Mm-hmm. And there were 6, so I know she let me know I'm here, I'm mm-hmm. good, and she 6 yellow roses signifying her 6 children. Yeah. And I was mm-hmm. like, wow, I just knew it at the time. So not even an hour later, it was the same day. It was crazy. I got more flowers from Texas. Turns out Texas, I think that's their flowers, the yellow rose, but not that, the other flowers were in the bouquet. So I got another bouquet of flowers, and there happened to be, oh my God, now I forgot. I have to count, but 12. There were 12 baby yellow roses. Like, the first ones were huge and bloom. These were like yellow roses, but they were, and I have pictures of everything, of course, because I counted those like 10 times because they were, I believe 12. My mom had 12 grandchildren. Yeah. So she was letting me know from the other side that she was there and that she is with us. Because my question was, I'm surprised, you're not even letting me know you're there and that you're with me. And she's like, oh, I'm with everybody. So that was really cool.
But that's what's so crazy. But I want to go back a little bit, because that really is, I feel like, one of the biggest questions that we get is, are they with us? And people just want to know, like, that their loved ones are with us. But I want to talk about when you said that you were talking to her telepathically, and that's, you already knew, you already were a medium, you already knew how to connect, you already knew how the spirit world works. But for those of you who don't know, because I've gotten a lot of questions, not necessarily questions, I've got a lot of messages from their loved ones in a reading where the loved one will tell me, like, let them know I heard them, or let them know I know that they were holding my hand at the end, even though their mind wasn't conscious or there in that moment, or they couldn't communicate back. It has happened so many times in my readings where their loved one will say, this happened, and my client can't believe it sitting across from me. But it's in those moments of, even if your loved one is still here, sometimes their soul, when it's close to their time, their soul is very much in and out of the spirit world and back and forth, and their consciousness. And from our experience, it is those moments like that where we're unsure, we're going through and we're holding our loved one's hand, and we feel like they're not with us, or that they can't hear us. So that when they come through with that message in a mediumship reading, it really does make the biggest difference for our loved ones, because it shows that they are with us. And it just shows a little bit about how the spirit world works. But can you share the story of, so after grandmother had passed away and you were feeling that grief, when you first had to go back to work, or how that was like for you?
Yeah. So it was, I think I stretched it to probably a month, and I was so thankful that I got sick, because I don't know that I would have gave myself that much time that I really needed. And
I think it's important to realize that our emotions can affect our physical body. And everything is energy, and the fact that we live in an energetic universe, everything starts as energy first. So from our experience, again, too, we've realized that a lot of the physical ailments that happen, and this message just came up in my reading last week too, a lot of the physical ailments that we feel in our body started as an energetic one first, whether it's an emotion that was stuffed down and not looked at, or a past situation that was stuffed and not brought to the light. It can cause these energetic blockages that manifest into physical ailments. And so I'm sure it all happened, or the reason you got COVID right after your mom passed, it wasn't just by coincidence. It was because of all of the emotional grief that you were feeling, that you didn't know what to do with or how to yet process it, that it manifested into this physical illness, because your energy was already so low and you were already going through or feeling so much that your body couldn't handle it or didn't know how, and it manifested into this illness that made you sick for a month. But and I think too, that's why it's so important that I feel like we're going to talk about this all the time, every time, but it's so important to acknowledge your emotions and to validate them and bring them to the light, because if we don't, and if we continue to stuff them and ignore them and suppress them, it's only going to come out, like you said, in other ways, and manifest into other ailments. And so when we can learn to understand them, I feel like it'll help our physical energy just flow that much easier.
I think I forget all my stories because I tell them all the time, and so much happens all the time. But I keep remembering this one story now that I told that story. So I just want to share one little thing.
Yeah.
So my mom also gave us all, before she passed, hummingbird containers from the dollar store. She went shopping and she loved the hummingbird, and that was going to be one of her signs, she told us. That those couple weeks I was homesick, and my friend sent me a hummingbird. It was really unique, wind chime, but it was made out of wood and with a little bell on it, and it was just really unique. And it was that morning I was talking to my mom again. I remember it was like every time I put a shout out to her, like, hey, all right, you got the flowers, but are you just MIA now? Like, I'm still sick here. Like, I need more. And that night, I got a hummingbird. I believe I asked her for a hummingbird, but anyway, that's another story. I'm wearing a hummingbird necklace. I did ask her this day, and it came that day. Yeah. So it's just so amazing how.
So did your friend know about the?
So that's what I was going to say. Not only did she not know, but because nobody knew. Like, this was when she passed. She was going to send us hummingbirds. I wouldn't be talking about that.
Yeah.
And so not only did she not know, my friend's a medium as well, but not only did she not know, she said it was in her cart because it was from Etsy. So it wasn't even, it wasn't on Amazon or she would go shopping. It was on Etsy. And she said it was in her cart for the past month, and she wanted to get the perfect thing. So she was in and out with different things, and she ended up sending that. So I put it in my group chat because by now my brother was having dreams. Everyone was having experiences with my mom. So I said, oh my God, I just asked Mom today, whatever. And I said, look what she sent me. And my sister said, she texts right away, shut the hell up. And I was like, what? And she sends me a picture. She just got one in the mail from her friend who got it on Etsy, same exact. And I, I went on Etsy right away and put in the search bar hummingbird winch, because I wanted to see how popular this thing was. And they had many. To have the exact identical hummingbird, I was like, thanks, Mom. So she started doing magical stuff like that, like out the door.
And I think that is so beautiful, but there's also that other aspect of it, which I think we've definitely felt before, but we've also heard from our clients that, well, I'm not getting any signs from my loved one, or they're not showing up for me, or I don't feel them. And I've noticed, and you can say if you have anything else, but I've noticed that sometimes when we're not feeling our loved one or seeing the signs from them or getting any signs from them, it's not because they're not with us. It's because there's a lot more emotional stuff. There's grief that's still sitting here that your humanness, your soul needs to go through first before you can start seeing or receiving these signs as strong as you want. There's also a level of openness and surrender that comes with receiving the signs, because as much as picky as you are with the signs and I want you to show me this or this, you do, I feel like, have a level of surrender where it's part of you knows it's going to show up. You don't know how, you don't know when, but you have that level of surrender that allows that energy to flow, where it's happened to me before where I get okay, I really need to see this. I really need to see this to make this big decision. and then I don't see it, but it's because I'm trying to force it. I'm looking in every direction, and I'm trying to force this sign to come forward, which energetically has this resistance that blocks me from being able to receive it.
So I agree, and so many cool things that you just said, because I think I've had experience surrendering. So I know when I'm surrendering, which is every time I walk into a mediumship reading, I have to surrender. So that's something I put focused energy crafting, you know what I mean? Like, so that's something years now that I learned to surrender.
Yeah.
So when it comes to me and my stuff, you know, I come from strong skeptic, you know, needing proof, like you said. And the other thing you said I was going to comment on is, you know, when people don't feel their loved ones, like what you were saying again about the emotional space that we don't really always get. And I feel like since I was 2, I've been on this journey. So I'm a medium, meaning I've been actively, you know, your average person probably isn't, you know, they're living their purpose doing something else. But now looking back, this has always been my purpose, I can say now. So I've been constantly. So it took me, you know, I'm 50, well, 48 years to really understand in the language of spirit and everything else. Like, I did it as a natural, not knowing, but you know what I'm saying?
And you've done it, you've taken 48 years to learn how to give yourself that space consciously. And so for people who are going through this right now that aren't feeling their loved ones, or they are letting it go, or they're mad at your loved ones, those are all okay emotions to feel, but there is a level of...
And it's not because they can't do it.
Exactly.
That's the thing. Like, and that's why we teach, I think every session we have, we teach them that you can do this too. But it's up to them how, you know, how they're going to process their emotions. That's why Reiki is so good and goes hand in hand with the grief, because you're moving those, you know, that energy of grief through, and you're looking at it, you're feeling it, you're having space for it. So every Reiki session, I'm excited, because I mean, my main intention is to help them connect more to themselves, and by releasing, by, you know, all that stuff, and then essentially they're feeling their loved ones more. So it's beautiful. Yeah,
for those of you who don't know, Reiki it's an energy healing. So Reiki is really good for just helping you to release and let go of any of the emotional stuff that you've been holding on to. And we incorporate the mediumship and the intuitive messages in our Reikis, which really helps to aid in the healing. But like you were saying, it is that level of allowing ourselves to feel and acknowledge how we're feeling in order for it to be released. That really is the first step. And when we can surrender to that, and surrender to, there does have to be this belief behind it that like, okay, I asked for this, but now it's not your responsibility to figure out the how it's going to happen or the when it's going to happen. And there has to be a level of trust and surrender. And then that's when it will show up for you. Like you said, it took you however many years to give yourself that space and to learn how to surrender. And you've seen it time and time again show up in magical ways. And so I think for those of you who aren't feeling your loved ones so strong, or aren't having dreams of them, or aren't getting signs from them, really just see what ways you can tune in to your emotions. And I think I think I said this in the last episode, mediumship and connecting to your loved ones is so much more for you and for helping you to move forward on your journey. And how everything really is connected into understanding ourselves deeper and on a deeper level. It's like when you dive into one thing, like, okay, I want to learn how to connect with my loved one more or stronger, it's going to branch off into a million different areas. That's going to take you a million different ways that's going to help you on your healing journey. And things are going to come up for you that you didn't even realize were there, or emotions are going to come up, but it's all going to help you to let go of everything that your soul is ready to let go of. And in turn, in the end, it's just going to make it that much easier to connect with your loved ones on the other side.
Absolutely. So I had a lot of stuff going on. I went in a lot of different roads throughout my life.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sitting again with me. It's crazy, really, because we showed up today.
Oh, but I wanted to say one more thing. Yeah. Last thing. Because you were saying, like, when I went back to work.
Yeah.
And so when I went back to work, I remember it was probably a month at this time, and I remember, like, you know, my mom was already pretty strong now. She's sending me all the stuff. So I felt like I had a handle on my grief, or you know, I felt like I can go back to work today. And my very first reading in the book was my mother's maiden name. So I was like, oh my God, my first day back. So that was, again, so I think you mentioned earlier, or we were talking about how mediumship could help.
Yeah.
And that just, I was on cloud 9 because my mother's maiden name, that's this woman's name in the book. And I'm like, she's here, she's with me. And I could do it with her. So it wasn't like my mom's gone. I literally felt her presence with me. So that's how it helped me, or helps me, and continues to help me, the mediumship. Because, you know, just having that, like, you know, just like a friend here, like, I got you, I'm with you. And when you have that support, you can get through anything. And so to have my mom say, I'm here, and today was the day you go back, and, you know, whatever, it was just, there's nothing else like it, like that feeling.
And it's those stories that are my favorite, and after every reading we share with each other what happened, or the evidence that spirit came through, because even though we do this work for a living, it shocks us and it excites us every single time, every new piece of evidence. It really is just such a beautiful thing. And each reading, I think our trust and our support and our surrender with spirit just strengthens that much more, because it is that evidence that it's like, I can't believe it. Look how beautiful this person's loved one showed up for them today. And I don't think I'll ever get over that. And I have not yet.
And I think I've been doing professionally, well, since 2013, Reiki, probably 15 just readings. And like, it
I remember you
blows
told
my
me
mind.
One time you had a client that was like, well, why do you seem so shocked?
I know. Because sometimes I'll be like, what, are you? And I'll put a few swear words. Are you serious right now? Like, sometimes I'm so blown away. And they're like, why do you seem shocked? Like, I'm shocked, but why do you? And I'm like, because it is incredible.
It really is.
And it's like witnessing miracles all the time. Like, we live a life of,
just fulfillment.
Yeah.
And being able to see that, and help our client that's sitting across from us. But we sat down today without having any clue what we were going to talk about, what we were going to bring to the table. But I love that it really has just been flowing the best way, and these things come up, and we trust that whatever ends up coming out of our mouths is something that somebody is gonna need to hear or like to hear, and it's gonna help them on their journey. So
and my coffee cup yesterday, it was the day early, but it was 777, which is my mom's number. So because last podcast was 313. So I don't know if there'll be a theme there too, but
well, thank you all for tuning in today, and we will see you next week.